Hello, my name is Seamus Daly, and for my final project for diversity in education, I decided to conduct an interview with six of my friends from Oneana on their experience with classism in their schooling. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to provide some context about the topic we're discussing. Classism in classrooms refers to the way socioeconomic status influences educational experiences and opportunities. It's a pervasive issue rooted in broader societal inequalities that often manifests in our schools through unequal access to resources, social dynamics, and systematic barriers. For example, in many areas, public school funding is tied to local property taxes. This means that schools in wealthier neighborhoods often have more resources, better facilities, and access to advanced academic programs, while schools in less affluent areas struggle to provide even basic materials. Additional hidden costs like field trips, sports fees, and uniforms can prevent some students from fully participating in school life. These disparities create an uneven playing field, leading to significant challenges for students from low income families. Many face stigma, social exclusion, or lowered expectations from peers and educators, which can limit their confidence and future opportunities. The consequences of classism in classrooms are far reaching. Students from marginalized economic backgrounds are more likely to face academic struggles, limited access to higher education, and fewer career opportunities, perpetuating cycles of poverty. This isn't just a problem for individuals, it's a societal issue that affects us all, as it reinforces inequality and limits the potential of our workforce and communities. In this interview, I want to explore these issues through the experiences and perspectives of my friends. Together, we'll discuss how classism has impacted education, who it marginalizes, and how we can work toward creating a more equitable system for everyone.
Okay. So give me your name.
Daniel Duplessis.
Cool. Can you tell me about your school district and the socioeconomic makeup of the student body?
So, Nanuet is a mixed income school. We had people from the higher end of the socioeconomic ladder and also the lower end. Some people were given free lunches and worked with that program, and others weren't. Um, yeah.
What was your own socioeconomic status during your time in school, and how did it compare to your peers?
So, I was definitely on the lower end. I qualified for free lunches and other free applications for college. Compared to my friends, they were also not necessarily like higher end, but they were a little more well off than I was. So me and one friend in particular were the lowest out of our group.
Okay. Next, I'm going to ask about personal experiences. So, did you ever feel your socioeconomic status affected the way you were treated by teachers, administrators, or other students? If so, how?
Never. I did not.
Um, were there moments when you felt left out or excluded due to financial constraints? Examples like field trips, extracurriculars, social events.
Never in high school. Uh, Earlier, maybe I didn't have enough to go on a field trip, but never in high school.
Did you notice any differences in the resources or support available to students based on their socioeconomic background?
I did not see anything. We were all provided a Chromebook at the beginning of high school, and we all had that.
So next, I'm going to ask about classroom and curriculum. So, were there any disparities in access to advanced classes, extracurricular programs, or college prep resources? How were these opportunities distributed?
From what I saw, there was no disparity, but in order to get on, take the AP test, you had to pay $90. But I think that's everywhere in New York, so nothing I saw.
Okay. Did teachers or school staff ever make assumptions about your abilities or potential based on your socioeconomic background?
Never.
Were discussions about class or socioeconomic issues included in the curriculum? If so, how were they handled?
We talked. I remember in particular a psychology class. We talked about socioeconomic status, and that was just to explain differences in psychological behavior from growing up. But that's the only thing I remember talking about.
Okay, next I'm going to ask about peer dynamics. How did class or socioeconomic status influence friendship or social groups at your school?
Um, from my experience, I saw that it didn't affect anybody. It seemed like everybody could hang out with whoever they wanted in school. No issue of where they lived and how much money they made.
Did you ever witness or experience bullying or exclusion related to class differences?
Yes. There were some people that made fun of others for not having some of the stuff that they had.
So next, I'm going to ask about systematic observations. So how did your school's funding or facilities compare to other schools in the same district or neighboring areas?
Compared to other schools, we had a relatively large amount of money going into our school at the time that I was there. We had a lot of renovation going on, and the sports teams were getting a lot of new equipment. So compared to other schools, definitely we had a lot of money coming in, but there were others that had more.
Were there visible differences in the quality of education or opportunities between schools in wealthier and less wealthy neighborhoods?
Definitely. I can compare Nanuet to Spring Valley, which is lower on the socioeconomic ladder. They did not have as many resources in their school as we did. And then even us compared to a school like Tappan Zee had much more uh, work and availability in Tappan Zee compared to Nanuet.
And how did socioeconomic status impact parent involvement in the school's community?
A lot of the So if a parent had to work a lot, we had programs afterwards, but if a parent had to do something, they were not involved in the school.
So did you have like a PTA?
We did have a PTA, but it wasn't huge. It was pretty big, but not every parent or everybody had access to it.
In what ways do you think classism shaped your educational experience and opportunities for the future?
I don't think it shaped my schooling at all. I think Nanuet did a very good job at keeping us all equal and just students. So
Do you believe classism in schooling can be addressed effectively? What changes would you recommend?
I think that my school did a good job with it. I think that if we just treat everybody as if they're all the same person about their socioeconomic status, then maybe we can work together instead of separating people based off of much money they make.
Looking back, is there a moment or experience that stands out as particularly emblematic of classism in your schooling?
Not that I can think of. No.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So first I'm going to ask for your name.
Owen Peck.
Okay. Can you tell me about your school district and socioeconomic makeup of the student body?
There's a lot of socioeconomic diversity. I live like half an hour north of Syracuse, so it was like right on the fringe of rural and suburban. And it's a pretty big district, so there were a lot of like trailer parks in the northern part of the district, and then in the southern part it was a lot of like suburbs.
What's your school district's name?
Central Square.
What was your own socioeconomic status during your time in school, and how did it compare to your peers?
I was like middle class. My dad, I don't know how much he makes. He works for the Air Guard though, and then my mom made like 100,000 a year. So we were well off in my eyes, but there were certainly families that made more, like mostly in the suburb part. So I was like probably like 65th to 70th percentile, I think.
Okay, now I'm going to ask about personal experiences. Did you ever feel your socioeconomic status affected the way you were treated by teachers, administrators, or other students? If so, how?
Probably other students. I don't think teachers or administrators, but I just think that I don't know. I feel like my school is kind of cliquey, and it's like, I don't know, like students who could afford to have a good time kind of were more socially accepted by other students.
Were there moments when you felt left out or excluded due to financial constraints? Examples like field trips, extracurriculars, and social events?
No, I don't think so. I think my parents did a good job at getting me through that.
Did you notice any differences in resources or support available to students based on their socioeconomic background?
No. It's a really big district by area, so a lot of the times I know like like there are kids that live half an hour away from the school. So if there was like an after school program or something, or like a study period after school, uh, it's not like you can just walk to school or anything. It's like a pretty rural area, so sometimes transportation would be hard. And if either you don't have a car or if your parents are working and they don't have time to come pick you up or something, the bus ride could be like an hour to get home after stuff like that. So that might make access to those a little harder.
Next, I'm going to ask about classroom and curriculum. Were there any disparities in access to advanced classes, extracurricular programs, or college prep resources? How were these opportunities distributed?
I think one big thing is we had a couple of AP courses, and there's a you have to pay to take the test for those. It's like $200 or whatever it was, $140 maybe, I don't know, for the AP classes. So that could just be like if you don't have money to spend on taking an advanced class, then you're not gonna be able to take the test or get credit for it. Although you could still take the class and like get the experience without getting the credit if you didn't take the test. So, yeah, I think so.
So, did teachers or school staff ever make assumptions about your abilities or potential based on your economic background?
Probably. Yeah. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like if a teacher knows that you have a strong base financially and like, I don't know, I guess it's like potential to succeed and like move on to the next level if you have enough money to pay for like college and stuff, then they'll expect more out of, or like expect you to at least apply yourself more.
Were discussions about class or socioeconomic issues included in the curriculum? If so, how were they handled?
Not really. I feel like it's not. Uh, yeah. No, I don't think so. I feel like it was kind of ignored.
Next, I'm going to ask about peer dynamics. So, how did class or socioeconomic status influence friendships and social groups at your school?
Uh, wait. Ask it one more time. I'm sorry.
Okay, so how did class or socioeconomic status influence friendships or social groups at your school?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of the athletes who played like year round in like club sports or something, like club soccer players, would get together because they do things like that outside of school together, and it's like an expensive thing to be able to do. Also, I think that my district is kind of like divided by socioeconomic status regionally. So it's like if you're north of the lake, then you probably, I don't know, that's a poorer region than south of the lake. So it's like, I guess, kind of what elementary school you went to and what people you met there. It was kind of like grouped together based on economic status.
Did you ever witness or experience bullying or exclusion related to class differences?
Not me, but it was a thing that happened in my school for sure.
So next I'm going to ask about systematic observations. So how do your school's funding or facilities compare to other schools in the same district or neighboring areas?
Pretty standard. 'Cause we'd play like other schools around us. We were in the same like league, I guess, for like sports at least, with like some of the rural schools that were further away from Syracuse and some of the like suburban city schools. So I think we were pretty middle of the pack in terms of like funding, cuz like some of the suburban schools have like crazy facilities and like three schools between middle school and high school, and then some of the rural schools will have like K through 6, 6 through 12, two school buildings and like smaller sports facilities and stuff. So I think we were pretty middle of the pack compared to the places around us.
Were there visible differences in the quality of education or opportunities between schools in wealthier and less wealthy neighborhoods?
Yeah, yes, probably. Yeah, like we had like 3 or 4 AP classes offered. I had friends from Liverpool. It's closer to Syracuse, and they had like 15, 20 AP classes offered. So yeah.
So, how did socioeconomic status impact parent involvement in the school community, like PTA?
I feel like if uh, a lot of times in my district, there are a lot of places where parents don't have the opportunity to take time off work to get involved, and like it's not a priority for them. I feel like when if you don't make a lot of money, then you can't. I don't know. You prioritize work over getting involved. Yeah.
hmm So, next I'm going to ask about impact and reflection. So, in what ways do you think classism shaped your educational experience and opportunities for the future?
Um. I- How bad is this? I feel like it kind of uh gave me more opportunities than some of the people that were around me probably.
Yeah.
Like inherently and systematically.
Do you believe classism in schooling can be addressed effectively? What changes would you recommend?
Yeah. And I think like providing free resources that are subsidized by the school district for students to succeed could do that. Say the question one more time?
Do you believe in classism in Do you believe classism in schooling can be addressed effectively? What changes would you recommend?
Yeah, and I think it has to be like apparent and like discussed in the curriculum, and like it's a real issue that happens, and it does make a difference. And I think another thing that could help is like scholarships for higher education to kind of break that glass ceiling and get people through, like if they grow up poor, to get a degree and kind of maybe be more successful than their parents were financially.
Alrighty. Last question. Looking back, is there a moment or experience that stands out as particularly emblematic of classism in your schooling?
No, not really.
Gotcha. Alrighty. Thank you. Alrighty. So we're going to start with general background questions. Can you give me your name?
Ryan Heafy.
Okay. So can you tell me about your school district and the socioeconomic makeup of the student body?
So I went to school in Florida. I went to Osceola County School District. And the socioeconomics, I would say it was probably like lower middle class.
What was your own socioeconomic status during your time in school? How did it compare to your peers?
So my parents were divorced and they were on two like socioeconomic spectrums, I guess. And my peers, I would say most of them, I think it was overall it was middle class. Everyone was middle class.
So now I'm going to ask about your personal experience. Did you ever feel your socioeconomic status affected the way you were treated by teachers, administrators, or other students? If so, how?
Did I feel? Ask that question again a little slower.
Gotcha. Did you ever feel your socioeconomic status affected the way you were treated by teachers, administrators, or other students? If so, how?
I don't think so. No.
Were there moments when you felt left out or excluded due to financial constraints? Examples: field trips, extracurricular, social events.
No.
Okay. Did you notice any differences in the resource or support available to students based on their socioeconomic background?
Did I notice it?
Or other students?
I mean, the one thing I think of is certain kids got free lunch. I mean, that was really the extent I saw. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, next I'm going to ask about classroom and curriculum. So were there any disparities in access to advanced classes, extracurricular programs, or college prep resources? How were these opportunities distributed?
Can you give me an example of what you mean by that?
Like advanced classes, extracurricular programs, like after-school activities, or college prep resources,
and
like SAT training.
and you're asking if that was available for everyone?
Yeah. How were they Like, how are they distributed? It like who
Uh,
had access to them?
I guess. I mean, word to mouth, of course. I mean, teachers telling us that there's club meetings, blah blah. Blah. We would have, I mean, jamborees for clubs and stuff like that, where they would show off clubs.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think it was mostly word of mouth, morning announcements, um, teachers. Yeah.
Okay. Did teachers or school staff ever make assumptions about your abilities or potential based on your economic background?
I mean, they didn't front that to me saying, "Oh, you're middle class, so you're better," or whatever. No, no, I don't think so.
Hmm.
Not that I noticed.
Were discussions about class or socioeconomic issues included in the curriculum? If so, how were they handled?
Included in the curriculum. Um, I mean, like historic, like economics. Like, what do you mean, like us as individuals in this current? Like, I don't. That's kind of a. I don't understand
Like
that question.
current socioeconomic issues within your community, were they included in your curriculum? Like, were they like spoken upon in the classroom?
Yeah, teachers talked about how those kids are less fortunate,
Hmm.
of course. But I wouldn't say it was maybe part of the written curriculum. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, we talked about it.
So now I'm going to ask about peer dynamics.
Mm.
So, how did class or socioeconomic status influence friendships and social groups at your school?
Well, I don't know how it had an effect. The only I think a geographical effect. I mean, there was a place called Holapa, which I guess if you want to use this term, like poor kids or whatever, uh, they would live there, I guess. But it was pretty, like I said, it was pretty middle class. And there was still middle class people in Holapa. Um, so I wouldn't said it. I would say it affected relationships or anything that with my friends or peers.
Mhm. Did you ever witness or experience bullying or exclusion related to class differences?
Um, no, no one really made fun of the no.
Hmm. So now I'm going to ask about systematic observations. So, how do your school's funding or facilities compare to other schools in the same district or neighboring areas?
I think. Oh, that's a heavy question. I don't know. I personally never saw a difference. I don't know. I didn't go to any other school district really. I was there my whole life, except when I lived in New York when I was little. But I didn't. I mean, I think maybe county got computers before us. I mean that maybe that's
Yeah, no,
one
that's good.
distinction.
Were there visible differences in the quality of education or opportunities between schools in wealthier and less wealthy neighborhoods?
Um, I, I mean, ask that question again.
Were there visible differences in the quality of education or opportunities between schools in wealthier and less wealthy neighborhoods?
Um, I don't think so. Like I said, it was all middle class. It was pretty mixed. So of course you had rich people and you had poor people. I mean, like it was pretty mixed though. So I guess depending on certain schools offered different programs. Like there was definitely like STEM related schools. So if you want to, but I wouldn't say there was socioeconomic reasons. It was more like if you just were in the guideline areas or if you were near the school, you went there and you got those programs. So I wouldn't say it was definitely like sectioned off by economics.
So, how did socioeconomic status impact parent involvement in the school community? Like PTAs? What, like, did you have a PTA?
What's PTA?
Parent Teacher Association? Like, were parents involved in your schooling?
My parents personally weren't.
Mm-hmm.
For others, I mean, we had volunteers. I don't know. I guess I wasn't really involved. That it was kind of just go to school,
Mm-hmm.
leave, come back. You know what I mean? It wasn't anything. I did clubs and stuff like that, but my parents were working or
Would you say most families in your district had two working parents?
um yeah, probably if you want. Yeah, if I had to take that guess, sure.
Mm-hmm. So, now I'm going to ask about impact and reflection. So, in what ways do you think classism shaped your educational experience and opportunities for the future?
Um, I don't know. I know I'm more fortunate that my parents were hardworking and I got scholarships and stuff like that, so I'm able to attend college. Um, I'm not sure. Ask the question one more time.
In what ways do you think classism shaped your educational experience and opportunities for the future?
Man, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I felt I was definitely fortunate. I mean, I was definitely upper middle class. Um, so, and like I said, I had scholarships, so I was able to attend college in New York State. Um, uh, yeah, I'm sure, of course, it played an impact. Yeah, I mean, that's all I really have to say.
Do you believe classism in schooling can be addressed effectively? What changes would you recommend?
Do I feel like Sure, I of course. I think more. I didn't personally witness bullying and stuff like that, but I'm sure there is, of course, bullying that happens for socioeconomic reasons. Um, I think definitely not limiting individuals because of their socioeconomics. That doesn't help at all. Um, I think the discussion does help, and I think it was nice to hear when I was younger. Maybe not nice to hear, but that there was kids that less fortunate than you. So and it was talked about, and it was definitely one thing I have to say is that we wear uniforms, and one of the reasons we always asked our teachers why we wore uniforms, and the reason was so that you couldn't really tell the difference between like kids. And I think one of the reasons is definitely like socioeconomic reasons. So if there's a kid that has raggier clothes or clothes they can't afford, everyone's wearing the same thing though. So it's hard to make fun of someone for that. So I think that's one thing. At first, I when I was younger, I hated it that we wore uniforms, but I get it now for those reasons.
Yeah. Looking back, is there a moment or experience that stands out as particularly emblematic of classism in your schooling?
I think what I just said, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
The outfits, yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
Sweet.
Alrighty. So I'm gonna first ask general background questions. So your name.
My name is Nate Gerzadas.
Awesome. So can you tell me about your school district and the socioeconomic makeup of the student body?
I went to school in Southold, New York, which is like very East End, Long Island. So people are mostly wealthy. Like there's a high medium income. I don't know, everyone's parents are making six digits mostly. But I felt like I was like pretty average. Like there were people, like there were a lot of Spanish people that were definitely from a lower background than I was, but there were also like really wealthy white families in Southold that were like well off.
So what was your own socioeconomic status during your time in school, and how did it compare to your peers?
I think I was pretty average because there was a large chunk of my school that was like a lot of Spanish kids that weren't in Southold for a long time. Like a lot of people had just moved from like Central America. Like there were a large portion of like Spanish kids, and there were also like people whose families have lived in Southold for generations, so they just like have a lot of money. But I feel like my parents split up when I was like 7, and then I was living with my mom ever since. But I feel like my stance is like middle of the road.
Next, I'm going to ask about personal experiences. So, did you ever feel your socioeconomic status affected the way you were treated by teachers, administrators, or other students? If so, how?
I don't think by any teachers, but there's definitely like a clique of I don't know, I guess like higher up, like little white kids that would be like I think that me and the Spanish friends that I did have, like we pretty much called them like the white kids, but I don't know, I'm white, so it's not like a racial divide. It was kind of just like a clique.
Were there moments when you felt left out or excluded due to financial constraints? Examples like field trips, extracurriculars, or social events?
I feel like not during extracurriculars or anything, because I don't know, all that I think of it are like the field trips that I went on. And I feel like everyone went on the same field trips, but I feel like a lot of the time, like the clothes that I would wear, I don't know, like I don't have that much clothing. And a lot of kids were like dripped out. Like I remember a lot of kids wearing Lacoste.
Yeah. Did you notice any differences in the resources or support available to other students based on their socioeconomic background?
I don't think so. My school was pretty small, and I graduated with like 66 people. So all the administration and all the kids were like very tight knit, and people knew each other well.
Okay, next I'm going to ask about classroom and curriculum. So, were there any disparities in access to advanced classes, extracurricular programs, or college prep resources? How were these opportunities distributed?
I don't think there was any difference. I remember being like when people would tell us about AP classes that we could take and everything for like the following year. It was all done as like a grade wide thing, so I don't think that there was like disparity when it came to AP classes.
Did teachers or school staff ever make assumptions about your abilities or potential based on your economic background?
No, I feel like the majority of my class was like they all I don't know, like the amount that people were making was similar, and I feel like there's hard to see like a big amount of disproportion. I don't know, this is hard to explain. Like there weren't that many people that I went to school with, so it's hard to see like a lot of differences when there
There's
isn't
only,
a
like,
big
66
sample size.
states,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Were discussions about class or socioeconomic issues included in the curriculum? If so, how were they handled?
Not really.
Yeah.
No, like when they talk about I don't know, critical race theory and stuff like that. Like I
Yeah.
feel like that was lacking. Like there wasn't a progressive look. I feel like it was very Common Core, and like even the teachers were like these wealthy white people. So it's like I don't know. It's like, do they even want to teach about that?
Yeah.
Like they probably want to teach what they got taught.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's what I think.
Next, I'm going to ask about peer dynamics. So, how did class or socioeconomic status influence friendships or social groups at your school?
There were cliques, like I said, like the Lacoste, like white kids, like I don't know. It wasn't like I was separated, but I don't know. It's like a friend group or clique like any other high school. But it was like there were a lot of kids who lived together. Like there was one neighborhood that's like that everyone went to for Halloween, and there were like a lot of kids that lived in the neighborhood, and they were like pretty fancy schmancy.
Yeah.
But they were also like in a clique.
Did you ever witness or experience bullying or exclusion related to class differences?
I was bullied in kindergarten by. I mean, that was like when I remember being bullied was just like one instance by one kid in kindergarten. But I feel like class differences, it's just hard to like make a point about class when there are so few kids. Like
Yeah.
honestly, I didn't go to school with that many kids.
Yeah. So next I'm going to ask about systematic observations. So how do your school's funding or facilities compare to other schools in the same district or neighboring areas?
I think that like locally, like there's another like kind of wealthy-ish town that neighbors Southold, and there's one that's like less well off. But I feel like they're all pretty similar in the way that they're funded. Like they're all nice schools. So I feel like to see like a drastic difference between my school and like the neighboring schools and like really crappy Long Island schools is you got to go to like the other county or go well, I don't know. You got to go farther away. Like all of my schools were pretty similar when it come to that.
Were there visible differences in the quality of education or opportunities between schools in wealthier and less wealthy neighborhoods?
Up Island, I feel like the education systems up Island are not as nice as the ones near Southold and like out east, just because I guess people pay higher taxes, and I guess schools get funded better because of the families that live in that town. But literally everything on the North and South Fork is so bougie, and like everyone has so much money that you have to go to like central Long Island, or even like Riverhead, which is like where the two forks meet, for it to be like not as nice as a district. And I remember going to Riverhead, which is like I don't know, definitely not as nice as Southold, and it was like I don't know, it feels like there's less attention paid to everyone, and there's so many more people, so it's like how can you pay the same amount of attention?
Yeah.
And my class is small, if I haven't said that right.
How did socioeconomic status impact parent involvement in the school community?
There were a lot of moms, bro. There were a lot of moms that were available just because they're like stay-at-home moms in Southold, but
Mm.
it was lucky nice. I remember my mom. I don't know. My mom wasn't stay-at-home mom for a while, but it's nice to like have your
Yeah.
mom come on all the field trips and
Yeah, like
everything, and like
PTAs.
yeah, literally like have everyone's mom pull up or like donate something or like bake cupcakes for an event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next, I'm going to ask about impact and reflection. So, in what ways do you think classism shaped your educational experience and opportunities for the future?
I don't think I learned about classism until like high school, even though I guess it was something that I might have been affected by when I was like younger. But I feel like they didn't teach that much about the divide in like different families make different amounts of money and everyone's lifestyle is so different and they all go to the same school. Like I feel like it just wasn't touched upon that much.
Do you believe classism in schooling can be addressed effectively? What changes would you recommend?
Yeah, teach about critical race theory. Teach about how people are like equal opportunity doesn't equal. I don't know, what did it say? Like
Oh,
Like, you know what I mean? Like, people don't have the same opportunities as others because they're, like,
in
they
this
d-
area.
yeah, they might not make as much, or, you know, like, some people have connections and are Nepo babies and stuff.
Yeah. Looking back, is there a moment or experience that stands out as particularly emblematic of classism in your schooling?
Um, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, just like those white people cliques and, like, all their moms coming to support, like, school events and. There's something like that out there.
Mm.
Yeah, like moms coming to school events, like different cliques of different kids that were better off. Really, I don't know. I feel like their parents were there a lot, pretty much.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like my mom was sometimes there, but that's why I feel like I'm like middle of the road because like my mom also pulled up.
Yeah.
It's not like she like left me all the time. But then there are kids who like your parents are never there because both your parents are working.
Yeah. Alrighty. Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm Olivia Goodenough.
Okay. So I'm going to first ask you some general background questions. So can you tell me about your school district and the socioeconomic makeup of the student body?
So my school district was mainly white people. We had in about like 2020, like after the pandemic, there was a lot of new incoming students that kind of were like mixed or black.
And what's the name of your school district?
The name of my school district is Marlboro High School.
So what was your own socioeconomic status during your time at school and how did it compare to your peers?
I definitely think that me and my peers were all like middle class, I would say, and we were all like around the same.
So next I'm going to ask about personal experiences. Did you ever feel your socioeconomic status affected the way you were treated by teachers, administrators, or other students? If so, how?
I definitely think that my teachers always supported me and like my academic like career. I never felt that they were like biased.
Were there moments when you felt left out or excluded due to financial constraints? Examples, field trips, extracurriculars, social events.
Me personally, no, but I know that since the senior year we did a Disney trip, majority of like my friends were having like a difficult time affording that because Disney is very expensive.
Did you notice any differences in resources or support available to other students based on their socioeconomic background?
Not that I know of, but I can see how it may affect other people, especially like what we just talked about, like field trips and like extracurriculars. I know for sports team that also like requires some funding.
So I'm now going to ask questions based on classroom and curriculum. So were there any disparities in access to advanced classes, extracurricular programs, or college prep resources? How were these opportunities distributed?
I would say maybe for extracurricular programs, maybe I could see that being a problem because it does require like funding, like what I said before, like you do have to pay for your own equipment if you want to like practice with the other people. Even when I was in cheer, I had to buy the bow or like the cheer sneakers and whatnot.
Did teachers or school staff ever make assumptions about your abilities or potential based on your economic background?
No, they did not.
Were discussions about class or socioeconomic issues included in the curriculum? If so, how were they handled?
They were brought up in my economics class or like my history classes, and my teachers went about it like a really mature way. I never felt that they were being like biased.
I'm now going to ask questions on peer dynamics. So, how did class or socioeconomic status influence friendships and social groups at your school?
My school is definitely cliquey. I will say that even my own friend group, I can see how we are not very diverse and that we are all very much of like the same class compared to other friend groups. Everyone kind of gravitated like to who they were most like in common with.
Did you ever witness or experience bullying or exclusion related to class differences?
I could definitely see exclusion. I never saw bullying, but like even on like bus rides to school, I could see how people with a lower socioeconomic status were being excluded.
So next I'm going to ask about systematic observations. So how did your school's funding or facilities compare to other schools in the same district or neighboring areas?
Our neighboring school, Highland, they had less college courses than us. They only had a couple, while our school had a lot more resources. We even had we have like a pool and a planetarium, and I know that our neighboring schools did not have that. So we wound up having Highland join us for like using our resources.
Were there visible differences in the quality of education or opportunities between schools in wealthier and less wealthy neighborhoods?
Like I said before, I would say maybe the college courses.
How did socioeconomic status impact parent involvement in the school community?
I know we had I forgot what it is called, but the parents, oh, it's PTA. The parents were able to like put their input on there, and also they had meetings like regularly where they could say what they were feeling, and there was also a Facebook thing where they could also like um basically interact with the school and express their feelings.
So now I'm going to ask about impact and reflection. So in what ways do you think classism shaped your educational experience and opportunities for the future?
It never affected me personally, but I can definitely see how it could affect other students.
And do you believe classism in schooling can be addressed effectively? What changes would you recommend?
I definitely think that it could be addressed effectively. I know that our school would hold assemblies talking about bullying and classism, so that's definitely a way to like reach the school entirely and get the word across. Other things is if a teacher sees something, they just say something.
And looking back, is there a moment or experience that stands out as particularly emblematic of classism in your school?
No, there's not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to first ask you about general background. So your first question is, what is your name?
My name is Kenzie Brooker.
Okay. So can you tell me about your school district and the socioeconomic makeup of the student body?
Yeah, so I went to Highland Central School District, and our socioeconomic status of the student body was relatively diverse. Like we had a lot of kids who were higher and middle class, but then we also had like a good majority of our class who came from lower income families.
So what was your own socioeconomic status during your time in school, and how did it compare to your peers?
I kind of sat right in the middle of the higher and middle class and then the lower class. We had a lot of kids come from different school districts to Highland who weren't Highland residents, which was a little interesting and like kind of diversified like our socioeconomic status as a school. And I wasn't from a different district, but I also like wasn't as high class as the rest of the high class kids.
So now I'm going to ask you about your personal experiences. Did you ever feel your socioeconomic status affected the way you were treated by teachers, administrators, or other students? If so, how?
I don't necessarily think that even though I was ranging middle to lower class that it ever affected me, but I do think I have a little bit of a different stance on that because my mom worked with the schools, which meant that I kind of just got a little bit different treatment from staff and students who knew my mom, even though we were lower to middle class.
Were there moments when you felt left out or excluded due to financial constraints, examples like field trips, extracurriculars, and social events?
No, we didn't have a lot of like extracurriculars or like field trips or anything like that when I was in school, just because of COVID. That like everything kind of got like thrown to the side, and I didn't really do like many sports and stuff, so I didn't have a lot of restrictions pertaining to that because I only did like one sport.
Did you notice any differences in the resources or support available to other students based on their socioeconomic background?
Yeah, I'd say that there definitely was, especially the kids that came to Highland from different districts. Most of the time when that happened, it was because they had gotten like kicked out of their previous district and moved into Highland as like a final resort. And you would definitely see like that they weren't always treated the same. They didn't have the same resources that kids who had been going to Highland or were in Highland their whole life had at all.
So now I'm going to ask about classroom and curriculum. So were there any disparities in access to advanced classes, extracurricular programs, or college prep resources? How were these opportunities distributed?
There definitely, because we did have to pay for college classes and like AP classes in high school, which made it definitely there was a gap between who could and couldn't take them. But we also did offer that any AP you would get college credit for, even without taking the AP, because we partnered directly with SUNY Ulster. And so I think that that was kind of on the better side of that, even though like it might have been harder for certain people to afford to take these classes. If you did, you automatically got the credit if you passed, which made it more like appetizing, I suppose, to take them and put the money into it.
So did teachers or school staff ever make assumptions about your abilities or potential based on your economic background?
I would say yes, and actually in the opposite, just because my mom did work for the schools, I think that they kind of assumed that we had a higher socioeconomic position where we didn't.
Were discussions about class or socioeconomic issues included in the curriculum? If so, how were they handled?
I do not ever remember talking the first time that I've ever heard socioeconomic issues was this year in college. So.
Okay, so peer dynamics. So how did class or socioeconomic status influence friendships and social groups at your school?
It definitely influenced them for sure. It was very like separated. Like I particularly hung out with mostly middle to lower income families, and then like it was very apparent of that like people who came from those other school districts hung out and they were in like lower class families, and then people from a place called Highland Hills where I live, which is high income families, were always together as well.
Did you ever witness or experience bullying or exclusion related to class differences?
Yeah, I'd say that definitely was something that happened. It was not necessarily always about the class like the economic difference, but just like them being and like having a different learning, not like growing up differently than the high income families did, that created a difference between them and instigated some bullying.
So now I'm going to ask about systematic observation. So how did your school's funding or facilities compare to other schools in the same district or neighboring areas?
Our funding was quite low. We didn't have half of the like athletic facilities that our neighboring school Marlboro did. Most of our like school fields and stuff like that were off of school grounds and at like the town fields and whatnot. And most of the time, if you were in a sport, like your uniforms, your cleats, all that stuff had to be provided by you and not through the school.
So were there visible differences in the quality of education or opportunities between schools in wealthier and less wealthy neighborhoods?
Yes, I would say that there was.
How did socioeconomic status impact parent involvement in the school's community, like PTAs and stuff like that?
Yeah, I definitely think that had an effect. My mom was in the PTA, even though we were a little bit middle to lower class. But when she would take me to PTA events when I was younger, it was always the families from higher income classes.
So now I'm going to ask about impact and reflection. So in what ways do you think classism shaped your educational experience and opportunities for the future?
I definitely think that our district was a little set behind compared to the districts around us of like what we were learned, how we were taught it, at what ages we were taught it. Like just talking to people from my neighboring towns are like, oh no, we learned that when we were 5, and I'm like, I didn't learn that ever. So
Yeah. Do you believe classism in schooling can be addressed effectively? What changes would you recommend?
I definitely think that there's certain ways that it can be changed, but also it's a matter of like where the school can get funding from. Like if you're in a low income area, you can't get a lot of money to make things better and help out like the lower income families, but finding ways to just like budget in things that make it possible for everybody to participate in specific activities, like having school uniforms available for kids who can't afford to buy their own school uniform.
Looking back, is there a moment or experience that stands out as particularly emblematic of classism in your schooling?
I think that looking back, something that was pretty noticeable at Highland was drug problems, actually. Like, we had kids come from those other school districts who had, like, severe drug problems, and, like, the kids from Highland who, like, had grown up there had, like, never experienced anything like that, and it was, like, a big shock to them. Like, it was always something that they were like, wow, I can't believe that this kid is doing, like, these hard drugs, but, like, that's how they kind of grew up, and that's what they knew because of the area that they lived in.
Yeah. All right, that was the last question. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
As this interview ends, I'd like to reflect on why classism in the classroom is such a critical issue and how it connects to the larger goal of teaching for social justice. Classism profoundly affects schooling and children in ways that go far beyond the classroom. For students from low-income backgrounds, unequal access to resources, implicit biases, and social stigma can create significant barriers to their education. These challenges limit not only their academic achievements, but also their confidence, opportunities, and future potential. In turn, this perpetuates cycles of poverty and inequality that harm entire communities. As teachers and educators, we play a pivotal role in addressing these inequalities. We have the power to create classrooms where every student feels seen, valued, and supported, regardless of their socioeconomic status. This starts with recognizing and challenging our own biases, advocating for equitable resources, and building inclusive learning environments. When we work to level the playing field, we're not just improving outcomes for individual students, we're contributing to a more just and equitable society. Personally, I'm committed to continuing my involvement in this issue and other social justice causes. I plan to educate myself further, listen to voices of those directly affected, and advocate for policies that promote equity in schools. Whether it's through engaging in dialogue, supporting initiatives for equitable funding, or working within classrooms to ensure all students have access to the opportunities they deserve, I believe sustained action is key. I urge all current and future educators to consider how classism impacts the students in your own classrooms. By acknowledging these challenges and working together to address them, we can ensure that every child, regardless of their socioeconomic background, has the opportunity to thrive.